Right. Is that okay, or should we switch the lights off? Okay. Right. Good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, I'm honored to be with you. And today we are going to talk about a very important subject, which is gods and myth, religion in ancient Egypt. Maybe I met some of you before, and especially yesterday, and I would like to introduce myself again. My name is Hisham. I'm native from Cairo, and I'm invited by Nancy and Amy to come over here to give some lectures. So I'm really honored, and I'm glad that I'm standing in front of you now and having the chance to tell you about my country and my history, and hope to see all of you in my country one day. Before we talk about religion, I just would like to give a very brief idea about history in Egypt. Very condensed, over a few minutes, just to help you to absorb all the information will be coming in this session. Life started in Egypt thousands and thousands of years ago, but we have to be precise and say the Egyptian civilization, because before having the civilization, people were living like Bedouins, traveling all around and looking for food and water and fighting each other for survival, very much like a Bedouin life, very harsh. And the Nile River started running from south to north and forming the valley, and people realized that now they have the current supply of water, then they can settle down by the Nile, they can learn stability, they can have agriculture, which is the first element of stability, as they had to wait for the harvest and so on. So started forming small communities, little villages, and then bigger towns and cities, and that was around 5,000 BC. 5,000 BC. Any?
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good. Welcome everyone to a small oasis of ancient Egyptian culture in Jackson. Our distinguished guest lecturer is Hisham al-Minere, and he's a native of Cairo, and some of you already have this information, but not all of you have it, and studied at the university there, and has been with us for the past 5 days, and has lectured on art, tomb building, festivals, architecture. Hisham is employed as a lecturer and a guide in Egypt and as a lecturer in England. Nancy Hoffman and I were in Egypt this past January on a trip, and we were lucky enough to have Hisham, our guide. And we were probably in a group of about 20, and we found that Hisham not only imparted information and educated us about what we were seeing, but he also helped to put things in context so we could make sense out of the very exotic sights of Egypt. So welcome, Hisham, and I would like to mention our sponsors are the Art Association, Carter Gray, Suzanne Harris, the Episcopal Church of Jackson Hole, and Nancy myself.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So, 5000 BC, when life was almost established in Egypt by the river Nile, Egypt then was divided into two countries. Not like Egypt we know today, but Egypt was split into two countries, one in the north and the other one in the south. I will come to talk about this, but I would like to mention that when they realized that this life, the beautiful life they had, will come to an end sooner or later, they thought of what might happen to them in the afterlife. You know, what happens when they die. The answer to the question that the first life is limited, it will end by death, and then we'll be having a second life, an eternal life, which will be either in heaven or in hell, according to how we were good or bad in the first life. When they thought of the second life, they needed to worship or to believe in sort of super creatures to guide them and protect them and make their journey into the afterlife safe. Because it was sort of a tribal community, and each tribe had the chief of the tribe and also the wise man, who was not just a religious man, he was also like a magician, he was like a doctor, or the one who gives advice, the one who works on healing people using sort of herbs and different things. So they started making statues and masks for their gods. The priests, or let's say the wise men, used to wear those masks with different forms of animals or birds, very much like the rest of Africa at the time, and they were celebrating those festivals. From there they developed the form of the totems. The totems is very African and was used also in Latin America and most of the early civilizations. So they had the totems, as you can see here, and that was the very first form of making statues of gods. This is a totem of Goddess Ma'at. Goddess Ma'at was a little feather on the top of her head. She was the goddess of justice, and I will come to talk about her later towards the end of my lecture. But she was a very important goddess because in the judgment day, after death, we'll have time in the tomb, and then we'll be invited for the judgment day. Then they will be weighing the heart and the feather. The heart, the human heart, and the feather of Goddess Justice. If the heart is heavier than the feather, it means that this guy was bad because his heart is full of sins. Then he will be thrown in hell. If the heart is equal or even lighter than the feather of justice, means that he got a light heart and he's a good guy, so he would go to heaven. So this is the importance of Goddess Ma'at, one of the very early totems in Egypt. So Egypt was divided, as you can see, that's the Mediterranean, that's the Delta, that's the Nile Valley, yeah? Okay, so Egypt, and that's the Red Sea, Sinai. Egypt, this is Egypt we know now. 5,000 years ago, Egypt was divided into two countries, or two halves, the north and the south. The north is known as Lower Egypt, and the south is known as Upper East. You can see it here. It's in Lower Egypt, Upper East. Then this is Middle Egypt, which is part of Lower Egypt anyway. Yeah. So Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt. Okay. Why Upper and Lower? Because it's all around the Nile. The Nile is the main source of water, has been always the main source of water. So the Nile is different from the rest of the rivers in the world, which is running from south to north. Yeah? The Nile comes from Lake Victoria in Uganda, in East Africa, running all the way down to the Mediterranean. So the land of the south is upper than the land of the north. So this is where from we got the terminology Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Okay. Each one of the two kingdoms had the following. The king wearing a crown, which is different from the other one, and they had a flag, and they had a local goddess or a protecting goddess. Okay. I put here the two colors, that's red and that's white. Okay? Those are the two colors of the crowns. I will show you the crowns now. These are the crowns. That's the red crown of Lower Egypt, and that's the white crown of Upper Egypt. Okay. Maybe after we finish the lecture, you will be confused and you can remember which is white, which is red. We know that there are two crowns, one of them is white, one of them is red. Let me explain why the colors are like this. Here, Upper Egypt is very dry. Yeah? So if you are in the Nile Valley, it's green. But when you leave the valley for maybe few kilometers and sometimes less than this, yeah, sometimes less than a mile, you find yourself in the desert, either eastern desert or western desert. So the popular color there is the color of desert, sand, which is light yellow or white. So they use the color for the crown, white. In Lower Egypt, it's very fertile because of the delta and the branches of the Nile and so on. So it's very fertile. The color of the soil, because of the silt, the Nile silt is reddish or brownish. So they use the red color for the crown. Okay? So here we see the two crowns. And you can see also that they are different in shapes, not just different in color. The shape of the red crown is very different from the shape of the white crown. Because they were like two kingdoms and they had their identities. So beside the crowns, they had also the flags. Yeah? And they had the protecting goddesses. In Upper Egypt, until now, it's less polluted and much cleaner than Lower Egypt. And it is also hotter. We're talking about 5 to 7 degrees centigrade hotter than Lower Egypt. Yeah? You don't feel the difference because it's already hot in Lower Egypt. But yeah, theoretically speaking, yes, it is a bit hot. So in Upper Egypt, they were growing the lotus flower. Yeah? The lotus flower or the lily flower or the water lily or the Nile lily, call it whatever you like. And because of that climate, it was very good to grow the lotus. So the lotus turned to be the symbol of Upper Egypt. When you carve the lotus on the wall, when you put it on a piece of paper or whatever, so this is like a flag. Yeah, that's Upper Egypt. In Lower Egypt, in the marshes of the delta, they were growing papyrus. Yeah, it's cooler and it's very good for papyrus and so on. So the same thing, papyrus turned to be the flag or the symbol of Lower Egypt. Okay. In Upper Egypt, until this very minute, especially in the winter, Upper Egypt, Aswan in particular, attracting lots of birds migrating from Europe, looking for the warm weather. Yeah? So in ancient Egypt, it was the same thing, if not even more. So they have chosen, because they had a great observation and they were sitting and watching what's happening all around them, and they found lots of birds flying everywhere in Upper Egypt. They have picked up one of them to be the strongest one, which is the female eagle or the vulture, to be the protecting goddess of Upper Egypt. In Lower Egypt, the marshes of the delta, what do you expect? Plenty of water and marshes and so on, so snakes. Lots of snakes in the delta. They have chosen the strongest and the most deadly one of all, which is the cobra, to become the protecting goddess of Lower Egypt. Yeah? So here, you will see that Egypt, after being split into two countries, they had a civil war. They were trying to unite the country, and the civil war started. How long did it last for, the civil war here in the States? 4 years. Okay, in Egypt was 2,000 years. from 5000 BC until 3000 BC. They were trying. But it never worked until king came from the south. His name was King Menes, Narmer, and he managed to conquer the north and united the country, which is around 3000 BC. Around the same time, the language hieroglyphics was established. So it's a written history. Before that we have history, yes, but nothing is written about the history, so we don't know much now. Yeah? So it's a written history. It's a pharaonic history of Egypt, started at 3000 BC because Egypt became united, and the king who was sitting upon the throne started to wear the double crown. Yeah? So as you can see, they are mixing the two crowns together. That's the white crown, and this is the red, that's the red crown, and this is the white crown. So they got, as if they got the white crown, and they put it inside the red crown to create the double crown. So the king who was sitting upon the throne of Egypt, starting 3000 BC, is known as the king of the United Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. Yeah? The word Pharaoh is derived from the word Bir'u. Bir'u. Pharaoh. Pharaon, Pharaoh. Bir'u means the big house. The big house. Indication of the ruler of the country. Okay, the pharaohs ruled Egypt from 3000 BC until the Greeks came to conquer Egypt with Alexander the Great, exactly in the year 331 BC. We make it 300 easy to remember. From 3000 till 300 BC, that's pharaonic Egypt. Alexander the Great came to Egypt. He was a smart man, realized that religion is the main issue in Egypt, so he decided to play the same game, and he made himself the son of the gods, like the pharaohs. His assistants didn't like it. His generals and so on, they thought that he's gone banana. But it was not. The guy had a vision, and he was ahead of his time. He knew that this is the best way to gain the Egyptians, to make them love him, to make them accept him, and this is what happened. So Alexander the Great and all the followers of Alexander, the Greeks or the Ptolemies in Egypt, until Cleopatra, the last member of this family, ruled, they were all acting as Egyptians. They were born in Egypt, they lived in Egypt, they were educated in Egypt, brought up in Egypt, died in Egypt, and buried in Egypt. Even Alexander the Great is buried in Egypt. The Romans took over from the Greeks after Cleopatra, who committed suicide in the year 34 BC. We make it 30. Easy to remember. 330. So 30 BC is end of Greek Egypt and the beginning of Roman Egypt. Because it's 30 BC, so something will happen short after that, which is the birth of Jesus, and Christianity introduced in 661 AD, and then turned into a Christian country by 300 AD. The beginning of the 4th century AD. Okay, and lasted as a Christian country or Coptic Egypt until the Arabs came from Saudi Arabia. 641 AD, make it 600, so double the number 3. and Egypt since is considered as an Islamic country, and the main religion is Islam, and the main language is Islam. This is very briefly about the beginning and the different stages of the Egyptian history. So as I told you about the goddesses, the protecting goddesses, and the lotus and papyrus, here you can see the cobra, and the cobra is wearing the red crown. We don't have the color, but we know it because we know the shape of it, right? And the cobra is standing on top of papyrus. Okay, here we have the vulture wearing the white crown, and that's the lotus. So these are like the two symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt. The name of the cobra goddess was Wadjet, and the vulture was Nekhbet. Okay? Most of the gods in ancient Egypt had bird animal forms and human forms. So here you can see another picture of Nekhbet and Wadjet, and you can see them in the human form now. This is a funny caricature or whatever, but it gives you an idea about it. But this is the original figure. Yeah, the king is in the middle. Can you see it? Yeah. The king is in the middle. He's wearing the double crown, and the two ladies here. Yeah, Wadjet, the cobra, and the red crown. Yeah, and Nekhbet with the white crown. They are touching very gently and fixing the crown, the double crown, upon his head, like crowning him and saying that you are the king of the two lands. We are the representatives of Upper and Lower Egypt, and we acknowledge you as the king of the United Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. And by the way, this scene is from a temple called Komombo, which is a Greco-Roman temple. So the king here was not a pharaoh, but he was a Ptolemy, a Greek ruler. So that's a very good example to know that the Greeks carried on the same rituals. They were doing exactly the same thing. Yeah? They were acting as the sons of devils. Now the main thing about religion, that although they had more than 2,000 gods in ancient Egypt, yeah, I mean, every corner, every street, every block, I think, they had a god or a goddess. But deep inside, they believe that they have only one main god. Yeah? The main god, regardless his name, because they've given different names to their gods. He was the sun god. Yeah? The most common name of the sun god was Ra, and that's a picture of Ra. So let's think about it this way. The other gods, the secondary gods, were in charge of certain missions, and when they finish, they report to the main god. The goddess of love, the goddess of war, the god of hereafter, creation, mummification, yeah? And they were all reporting to the main god. So we had different theories about the beginning of creation and how gods were created or started in Egypt. Of course, we know that now the main god is Ra. Yeah? So this is like a chart of the gods. One of the theories, it's known as Heliopolis theory. And Heliopolis, by the way, means, it's a Greek name, and it means the city of the sun, or the sun city. Yeah? And Heliopolis, originally before the Greeks, was the heart of the belief of Ra, the sun god. That was the center of his cult. And now Heliopolis, or the old city Un, they are parts of the greater Cairo. And if you ever go to Cairo one day, so when you get to Cairo airport, it's located in Heliopolis. So Heliopolis now is a very nice residential area, but in ancient Egypt was the center for the cult of Ra, the sun god. So here you see Ra, and the ancient Egyptians believed that Ra created himself. Ra, as the main god, created himself. And then he created two pairs of gods. Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of rain. Okay? First two. Shu and Tefnut. And then he created Geb, the god of earth, and Nut, the goddess of sky. Right? We go down after that to the children of Geb and Nut. They were trying to explain the magnificent phenomena of creation on earth and the sunrise and the sunset, because they were sitting and watching every day what's happening. The sun rises and then travels all the way, it sits behind the mountains of the West Bank, and I'll come back to this chart, but I would like to show you that scene or that figure of Nut, the sky goddess, and Geb, the god of earth. They believe that at the beginning of creation they were attached to each other. They were forming one body, yeah, when they were married. And then the god of air, god Shu, got shown here is like holding the body of Nut, trying to split them up, yeah, pushing her up, yeah, trying to split her up from the god of earth, Godra. Okay, that's the beginning of creation. Right. So you can still see this is a beautiful figure from the temple of Dendera showing goddess Nut. You can figure out the face now. Can you see the face? Yeah. And that's her body. Here you can see the arms. You got it?
Here's the hand.
The arms
Yeah.
and the hands, and that's the legs and the feet.
Oh.
You got it? So she is standing very much like stretching her legs like this, stretching her body like this. Yeah? Touching earth. I will show you this, maybe it's clearer. Can you see it? And here, that straight line is earth. Yeah, the planet earth. So although the god of air tried to split them up, he couldn't, because you can see that she's still attached to her husband, Geb, from one side, touching him with her hands, from the other side with her feet. Yeah? This is actually happens when we live in an open area like Egypt by the river Nile thousands of years ago, and you see every morning, actually the sky, if you look at the horizon, so the sky is joining earth over the horizon, from this side and from the other side. And it happens that every morning the sun rises as if it's like born, yeah, and it travels for the 12 hours of the day and then sets behind the mountains of West Bank and then being born again. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a solar disk in front of her mouth. She is swallowing the solar disk, which is the sunset, hiding the solar disk inside her body for the 12 hours of the night when it's dark, and then giving birth. Between her legs you can see another solar disk, and the difference between the two solar disks, that this one is the sunrise. You can see the sun rays. Yeah? So this is how the ancient Egyptians, those very clever people, try to explain the daily phenomena of the sunrise and the sunsets. So when you see something like this in the temples and the tombs, would you doubt for a second what you might read in some of the books that aliens came from another planet and they came here and they built this civilization and so on? If they did, would they explain the sunrise and sunset in that very primitive, childish way? You know, this is how they saw it. How they saw it every day. That was happening every day. So the birth of the sun every morning, and then again it disappears every day. Back to the chart of gods. When Geb and Nut were married, they had 4 children. Yeah? 2 boys and 2 girls. Osiris and Isis. Set and Nephthys. Osiris a male, Isis a female, Set a male, and Nephthys a female. Because they were the very first 4 humans on earth, then they got married to form 2 couples. So Isis and Osiris got married, Set and Nephthys got married. Very similar story to the story of Adam and Eve, yeah, and their 4 children, and Cain and Abel. Because Osiris was a good guy, Seth was not. So it was like sort of jealousy, and Seth decided to kill Osiris. But how to kill him and without being suspected, bearing in mind that he's the only one on earth and he will be the prime minister. But they have to look very clever anyway. So he designed a coffin using the measurements of his brother Osiris. Then invited Osiris and the sisters and all the creatures in Egypt at the time to a nice party, food and drinks, and making them drunk and acting as he wants to be a good guy, who wants to be a good brother. Everybody is happy because the 2 brothers now are getting on well together and